Why would a wolf stand and walk on its back legs? We know they're smart, social creatures. Could it be they're trying to mimic us, to be more human-like? If this doesn't worry you, it should, because without a weapon, we are no match for the strength, intelligence, and cunning of wolves. And our final story today shows just how closely some wolves have been observing us, our everyday routines and habits, and how they can use this knowledge against us. There is a family in Michigan who have carried a disturbing secret for generations. This story was never told outside of the family until 2014, when one woman decided to share it. In the 1920s, her great-grandfather was known as a man of means. He was successful and well regarded. Well, one night he was driving his car along a road in Rockwood in the southeast of Michigan State. Enjoying his evening drive along the Huron River and no more than a few miles from Lake Erie, his peace was rudely interrupted when, without warning, one of his tires blew. The man was quick to understand his predicament. Stuck on a country lane and miles from the nearest service station, he knew at once that his only course of action would be to walk to the nearest house and hope that the hospitality of those living there would extend to helping him replace his tire. So he took off on foot and walked along the roads until eventually he saw a house in the faded night sky, and took a direct route across several fields towards it. As he approached the door, he noticed that the house looked run down, but there was a light shining from behind the curtains, and this little sign reassured him that he'd soon be behind the wheel and on his way home. So the man raised his hand and knocked 3 times on the door, then stepped back from the door and waited, having no clue that his life was about to change forever. The door opened, and there before him stood something large and hairy. His eyes couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. The thing, so large in size it filled the doorframe, looked like a wolf, but it was standing on its hind legs. The man did not speak, could not speak, but stood staring in awe and confusion, with a sickening sense of dread rising from his chest. His mouth dried and his throat contracted tight. The thing stared at him, seemingly straightening its back and stretching its chest to increase its height, then inexplicably spoke. "Go, or I will kill you." By his own account, the horrified man began to shake. He couldn't move his feet. He could do nothing but stare, wide-eyed, mouth gaping open. The wolf spoke once more. "Go now." This was all the man needed to shake himself from the stupor. He bolted from the doorway across the fields and followed the road until he found his car, not once turning around to see if the thing were following him. When he reached his car, he got in, turned the ignition, and proceeded to drive all the way home with a flat tire. He never looked back and never drove that road again. What on earth did he stumble upon that night? Had wolves taken over an abandoned house? Were they just playing at being human? Or were they practicing? One thing is certain, there was nothing playful about the threat. But I can't help wondering if the house hadn't been abandoned. What if there had been people living there, and the wolves somehow claimed it for themselves? Well, this next true story gives us a glimpse into just how terrifying that situation would be for the occupants of the home. But first, if you enjoy my videos and would like to support the channel, please consider becoming a member of my YouTube channel. Just click on the join button for more info. On an ordinary Pennsylvanian night, Eric and Shelley Martin were busily unpacking boxes. It was 2007, and they had just moved into their new house in Palmyra. The thrill of moving was still shiny, the excitement at beginning the next chapter of their life together, and the bargain price they had secured the house heightened their moods. The stacks of opened and unopened boxes which filled every room didn't daunt them, and they chatted happily of plans for their new home and garden. But you know what they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Eric rose from where he sat on the floor, walking from the living room to the kitchen. As he passed a window, his eye caught through the lace curtain what he thought was a ball of light, far enough away to be in the woods adjacent to their new home. He stopped, pulled the curtain aside and peered into the darkness, his nose pressed against the glass window. He saw it again, only this time there were several balls of light which appeared to be floating in and out of the trees. He called Shelley to the window in hopes she might make sense of the strange lights, but by the time she made it, the lights had disappeared. The night outside their home was dark, the trees of the woods silhouetted only by the light of the moon. After a brief discussion, Eric and Shelley decided the lights were probably just torches used by hunters walking along the tree line. They promptly forgot all about it and resumed their unpacking. Only minutes later, though, they were surprised to hear multiple footsteps approaching the house, followed immediately by scraping and thumping sounds on the front porch. "Okay," Eric said, "this is getting weird." His mind instantly turned to the hunters in the woods, you know, the ones with the guns, but he reassured himself that perhaps they just needed help. Instinct was telling him another story though, and rather than open the front door, he pulled back the same lace curtain and peered through the window onto the front porch. Nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. At first glance, they appeared to be a pack of dogs, strange in itself, and why would they be scratching at his front door? But closer observation showed they were far too big to be ordinary dogs. They were wolves. But how could that be? Eric turned to Shelley with first fear, then horror in his eyes. She jumped up and raced to the window, and there saw with her own eyes 5 massive wolf-like creatures. But not wolves, they were larger than wolves, milling on their front porch, sniffing and scraping the ground and walls with their claws. Were they trying to get in? A sudden revulsion surged within her as she saw the 5 creatures, one after another, stand as bipeds, upright on their 2 back legs, and begin banging on the front door. By the way they bent their necks under the porch roof, Eric and Shelley could tell that several of the creatures must have been in excess of 7 feet tall. As the couple watched in horror, the wolf-like creatures left the porch and began walking around the perimeter of the house, apparently looking for a way to get in. Eric and Shelley had guns and knew how to use them, but they had stored them temporarily in the shed some distance from the house. They were essentially defenseless against these terrifying beasts. The couple's only hope rested on them not figuring out a way to get in the house. As Shelley kept watch, Eric checked every door and window, ensuring they were secure, and the couple, paralysed with fear, could do nothing but hold each other and wait. Eric would go on to say that the wolf-like creatures displayed frightening intelligence as they skulked around the property, turning door handles and checking that windows were secured. After what was the longest night of their lives, salvation finally came with the rising of the sun. As the first rays of daylight broke, Eric and Shelley watched as the creatures retreated back into the woods. The notion of standing or biped wolves targeting humans and working in cooperation with each other toward this common goal is utterly terrifying. Wolves have long scared and intrigued us with their intelligence. Who among us can claim to know what they're thinking? If you enjoyed this video, check out the one on screen now. And remember, it's a strange world. Keep your eyes and ears open and be kind. Cheerio!